For our next question, we have a fifth grader that's raising his hand, Ryan. So I'm going to unmute him and he can ask his question directly. Ryan?
So my question is so my question is about the Villa Lewaro, and and why didn't it go to someone in the family? And my second question is, do you know what she used to make the hair products?
Sure. So Villa Lewaro is the house that Madam Walker had built for her in 1918. And when in her will, she said that the house should go to her daughter when she died. And then after her daughter Alelia's death, she wanted it to be donated to the NAACP because she was so involved in their political activism. But when Alelia Walker died in 1931, it was in the midst of a really severe economic depression. And the cost of paying the taxes and repairing the house and doing the upkeep was so great that the NAACP realized that they couldn't really afford to take care of it. And so the house was sold to an organization called the Companions of the Forest. And this organization used it as a retirement home for their members for many, many years. It was bought by a man named Harold Doley, who was an investment banker, an African-American investment banker from New Orleans. And then he sold it to a foundation about 4 years ago. And this is a really sweet ending to the story for me, because the foundation was created by a man named Richelieu Dennis, who is using it as a think tank and a meeting place for women entrepreneurs, women of color entrepreneurs. And I'll just tell you a teeny bit about Richelieu before I answer your question about what was in the products. So Richelieu came to the United States from Liberia in the late 1980s. And he went to a college called Babson College in Wellesley, which is kind of like an undergraduate MBA, Master's of Business Administration. And when it was time for him to graduate, there was a war going on in Liberia, and his mom came for his graduation, but they could not go back home because of the war. And he was now a graduate from college, and he had wanted to go back to Liberia to start businesses, and he couldn't do that. So he and his mom and one of his friends took his grandmother's recipe for shea butter, and they started selling it on 125th and 5th Avenue. And then they have built it into a multi-billion-dollar business. And they make products, Shea Moisture and Nubian Heritage and the MCJW line. So Richelieu is an immigrant who has been a very successful entrepreneur, who then sold his company to Unilever, an international conglomerate, and took some of the money and bought Essence magazine, and then created the New Voices Fund for women, a venture capital fund for women of color entrepreneurs. And then his foundation bought Madam Walker's house. So this is full circle for me to have someone who cares so much about her legacy. I'm actually their historical consultant for the Walker product line. So I feel like my family is back and involved with it. So it's a happy ending for me. And I don't have to pay the taxes. So, so there's that.
That's even better.
Even better. Now, so for your second question, on what was in the product. So it's kind of hard. You have to imagine what life was like 100 years ago. So when most Americans didn't have indoor plumbing. So we take for granted that we can go in the kitchen and turn on the faucet, or that we can jump in the shower in the morning, but that wasn't the case. People used to have to go outside and pump the water, and they only bathed once a week, so it's kind of gross, so don't think about that too much. But they didn't wash their hair very often, and that meant they had really bad, if you think of the worst dandruff you've ever had and multiply it by 1,000. So they had a lot of bad scalp infections, and she was losing her hair. So really, her secret was this. She encouraged women to wash their hair more often. She had a shampoo and then an ointment that was like Vaseline, but it had sulfur in it, and sulfur was kind of a medicinal agent that healed some of the sores on her scalp. Once her scalp was healthy, her hair began to grow back.